What if I told you, dear friend, that the very things you've been tossing into the trash bin might be waiting for a second life in your garden? Picture yourself stepping outside on a quiet morning mug of tea, warming your hands, and instead of seeing plastic bottles and old tires waiting for the garbage truck, you see playful penguins, cheerful caterpillars, and colorful lanterns smiling back at you. That shift in how we see the ordinary can transform not only our garden corners, but also the way we feel about ourselves. You see, beauty doesn't have to come from a catalog or a fancy store. It often comes from the scraps we overlook. Every bottle, every lid, every rusted spoon has a story to tell if we're willing to listen. And for those of us who have lived through years of change, hardship, and renewal, isn't it comforting to know that we too can be like those scraps, still full of potential, still able to surprise with joy and purpose? Today, we'll wander through ideas that prove trash is never just trash. With a splash of paint, a touch of playfulness, and the wisdom of age, we can turn what others discard into treasures that tell our stories. You don't need youth or money, just imagination, patience, and the belief that your hands still hold the power to create beauty. Do you remember the joy of making little crafts with children or grandchildren? Perhaps it was cutting out shapes from paper gluing buttons to cardboard, or painting rocks into animals. That same spirit of play can live again in your garden, only now, instead of paper scraps, we use what most people throw away. Picture a row of penguins not waddling on ice, but standing proudly in a flower bed, each one made from yesterday's plastic bottles. Their little black and white coats, painted by hand, shine softly in the morning light, while their orange spoon beaks stretch forward as though ready to explore the herb patch. Some might even wear mismatched button eyes, a detail that makes you smile rather than frown, because imperfection here feels like character. I once visited a neighbor who had created a family of these penguins for her grandchildren. She lined them up near the snow-white stones edging her walkway. Each child had painted their own, so no two were alike. One had crossed eyes, another wore a scarf made from a strip of old fabric. Another had feet fashioned from bottle caps that tilted slightly in the soil. She told me it became more than just decoration. It became a story her grandchildren remembered every time they visited. And isn't that what we want in our golden years? Not just tidy flower beds, but places filled with laughter, memory, and conversation. A painted penguin or a cheerful snowman made from milk jugs does more than brighten a corner. It tells visitors, this garden belongs to someone who still sees possibility. It's an invitation for children to giggle, for neighbors to stop and admire, and for us to feel that simple pride of making something from nothing. If you'd like to try, you don't need perfection. Start with a bottle, add a coat of black and white paint glue on some button eyes, and maybe give it a spoon for a beak. Stand it in a pot of succulents or along a gravel border. Before long, you'll notice how that little figure changes the space. Suddenly, the garden isn't just for growing plants, it's for growing joy. And every time you walk by, you'll be reminded that trash, when touched with imagination, can become a companion in your daily walk outside. Every garden path needs a touch of whimsy, something that makes you pause and smile. For some, it might be a row of daisies. For others, a colorful wind chime. But imagine walking along your garden's edge and finding a bright, cheerful caterpillar made not of plastic toys or costly ornaments, but of old worn tires painted in joyful colors. Each tire becomes a segment of its playful body, one red, one yellow, one green, one blue, lined up neatly like footprints from a storybook. Its friendly eyes might be made from soda bottle caps, and a wide grin painted across the front makes it look as though it's inviting you to follow along its little journey. I remember visiting a friend whose grandchildren had helped her create a tire caterpillar for her backyard. The children picked the colors, dipped brushes into paint, and laughed as their strokes overlapped and dripped. The result wasn't flawless. One section was streaky, another uneven, but together those imperfections gave the caterpillar personality. It's not supposed to be perfect. She told me it's supposed to feel alive. And indeed, when you walked past, it looked like it might crawl just a little farther the next time you turned your back. Beside that colorful line of tires were tiny hedgehogs, also made from scraps. Some had spines fashioned from broom bristles, others wore bottle cap noses, and one even had a crown of daisies tucked gently around its head. Nestled among the marigolds, they looked like little guardians peeking shyly from their hiding places. The children adored them, but the adults loved them just as much because they were proof that imagination can bring life to even the smallest corners of a yard. And here's the gentle reminder for all of us: projects like this don't require heavy lifting or costly tools. Ask a neighbor or family member to help cut or move the tires, then take your time with the painting. Even sitting down at a table with a single tire, a brush, and a few cheerful colors can be enough. The point isn't speed or perfection. It's the process of turning something old into something joyful. When you place those hedgehogs in the mulch or line up your caterpillar along the garden's edge, you'll notice more than decoration. You'll feel a spark of play, the same spark that keeps us young at heart no matter our age. In that moment, the garden becomes more than soil and flowers. It becomes a story written by your own hands. Fences are funny things, aren't they? We often see them as barriers, lines that separate inside from outside. But in a creative garden, a fence can become a stage, a backdrop for stories that surprise anyone passing by. Imagine glancing toward your fence and spotting a giraffe peeking over the herbs, its long neck stretching curiously as though it wants to know what you've planted today. Now picture a parrot perched proudly beside it, wings made of old plastic spoons, fanned out in glorious reds, blues, and yellows, ready to break into song. These aren't store-bought statues. They're born from detergent bottles, discarded spoons, and a touch of playful imagination. I once saw a version of this in a neighbor's garden. She had taken an old laundry jug, painted it with soft brown patches, and shaped sponges into horns for the giraffe's head. Its button eyes were slightly mismatched, giving it a sweet, lopsided charm. Beside it, a parrot shimmered with spoon feathers painted in bold tropical hues, its beak cut cleverly from a worn-out garden scoop. "I never thought I'd have a safari in my backyard," she chuckled, but here they are. Her grandchildren loved giving them names, and the fence, once plain and gray, suddenly felt alive. What struck me most was how this playful corner transformed her whole space. A fence usually says, "Stop," but here it whispered, "Look closer." That lesson extends beyond the garden. Sometimes the things we think are endings, old age, worn objects, weathered fences, can actually be beginnings if we choose to see them differently. If you'd like to try something similar, start with what you have. A large bottle for the giraffe's body spoons, or cut plastic for feathers, and a few strokes of leftover paint. Don't worry if the colors don't match exactly or if your brush wobbles a bit. Those irregularities are what make the figures feel alive. Place them where mint or rosemary can grow around their feet, and suddenly your fence becomes more than wood or bamboo. It becomes a storybook page waiting for new chapters. And isn't that what gardening in our later years is truly about? Not just growing herbs and flowers, but growing joy, playfulness, and a gentle reminder that creativity belongs to every season of life. A giraffe and a parrot on your fence may seem whimsical, but they're really proof of something deeper, that wonder doesn't fade with age. It simply finds new forms. There's something special about movement in a garden. Flowers sway, leaves rustle, birds flutter by. And then there are creations that spin, catching the breeze like laughter caught on the wind. Imagine looking out across your yard and seeing a row of flamingos, not stiff or silent, but twirling gently, their pink wings shimmering as they dance. These flamingo wind spinners aren't carved from wood or bought at a pricey shop. They're made from the simplest scraps, discarded fan blades, soda bottles, and bent bits of wire. And yet they carry more spirit than anything you could buy in a store. I once visited a local senior craft group where a few of the members had built a whole flock of these spinners. They laughed as they described how their first attempts wobbled or leaned too far to one side. But once the flamingos found their balance, they became the heart of the garden. "They look like they're dancing for us," one woman said as the breeze set them twirling. And truly they did, wings flashing pink legs, balanced on thin poles, each one spinning with a rhythm that felt like music only the garden could hear. What makes these spinners so delightful isn't perfection, it's play. Old fan guards become wings, bent wire forms a graceful stance, and faded bottles take on new life when painted in soft flamingo pinks. When the wind nudges them, they come alive, spinning slowly or whirling with more energy on a gusty day. Children run to see them, neighbors pause to watch, and we too feel a little lighter as we witness movement made from things once destined for the trash. And here's the gentle truth: projects like this remind us that joy doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. All it takes is a willingness to see beauty in unlikely places. For older hands, this project can be simple and satisfying, painting the wings while seated, attaching parts with glue or light screws, and letting a family member help set them firmly in the ground. The garden does the rest with its breezes. Place one spinner near your herbs, another by a path of pebbles, or line a few beside your patio. Every turn of those pink wings will remind you that life keeps moving no matter our age, and that movement can be graceful, humorous, and deeply comforting. Flamingo spinners made from trash aren't just decorations, they're tiny dances of joy, reminding us to laugh, to play, and to welcome each breeze as a partner. Every garden needs a place to rest, a bench where you can sip tea in the morning or linger at sunset. But what if that bench could also make you smile every time you sat down? That's what happens with the whimsical trash panda bench. A seat crafted to look like a raccoon using discarded barrels, pipes, and scraps. At first glance, it's simply a spot to sit. But look closer and you'll notice a striped tail curling from painted pipe bottle cap, eyes gleaming with mischief, and a wood-slatted belly that invites you to settle in for a while. I once saw a version of this tucked beneath a pergola at a community garden. The volunteers had built it not just as a bench, but as a statement that humor belongs in gardens too. Children ran straight to it, patting the raccoon's head before climbing up, while adults chuckled at its quirky face before easing down to rest. One older gentleman told me he came there every week just to sit with the raccoon as if it were an old friend keeping him company. That's the magic of something handmade with love. It becomes more than an object. It becomes part of the family of the garden. The beauty of this idea is its adaptability. You don't need to weld or build from scratch. Even a few painted planks and a barrel can become a character with just a little imagination. A broomstick can serve as a tail, plumbing pipes as arms, and a few brush strokes of black and white paint can transform scraps into fur and whiskers. The project doesn't demand perfection, it thrives on personality. For seniors, this kind of DIY can be a group effort. You might do the painting while someone else assembles the heavier pieces. You might decorate the bench after it's built, adding details that reflect your sense of humor. And when it's finished, you don't just gain seating, you gain a companion, a character who guards your herbs or watches over your marigolds. What I love most about the raccoon bench is its kindness. It doesn't take itself seriously and it doesn't expect perfection. It simply offers a place to rest, while reminding us that even the scraps of life, the old, the tossed aside, can hold charm. In a way, the bench teaches the same lesson we often learn in our later years, that usefulness and delight can coexist, and that sometimes the most meaningful creations are the ones that make us smile. There's a reason owls often appear in gardens, and stories, they're symbols of wisdom, quiet observation, and second chances. Now imagine a row of these watchful friends made not of stone or ceramic, but of scraps most people would throw away. Old soda bottles become plump little bodies, jar lids turn into wide, curious eyes, and spoons painted in soft tones transform into playful beaks. Hang them from a pergola, line them across a porch beam, or tuck them under an eave, and suddenly your garden feels watched over in the most delightful way. A dear friend once told me about the first time she tried making owl planters. She cut a few bottles, painted them earthy browns and greens, and added ivy around their crowns. They looked a bit uneven at first, but when she strung them along her porch, something magical happened. At dusk, she placed tiny fairy lights inside, and as evening settled, the owls glowed like little lanterns, their bellies twinkling as if fireflies had come to stay. Her grandchildren squealed with joy, and neighbors began asking how she made them. What started as a simple project turned into a tradition. Every year, she adds a new owl to her family. The beauty of owl planters is that they remind us of the value of second chances. Just as we've lived through seasons of growth, loss, and renewal, these scraps find new life in the shape of guardians and storytellers. Their mismatched eyes, their painted feathers, their glowing lantern bellies, each imperfection adds to their charm. And isn't that the same with us? The lines on our faces, the unevenness of our steps, all signs of a life fully lived. Practically, they're simple to make. A plastic bottle cut in half, a pair of jar lids for eyes, a painted spoon for a beak, and whatever scraps you have for wings or crowns. Add soil and a small herb or trailing plant, or tuck in a battery-powered light for evening glow. No fancy tools, no heavy lifting, just small steps that bring character to your space. When you look up at your owls swaying gently in the breeze or glowing in twilight, you'll be reminded of wisdom that joy doesn't come from perfect things, but from seeing beauty where others see waste. And you may find, as my friend did, that these little creatures do more than decorate a garden. They create memories, they hold stories, and they whisper gently, "You too are still full of light." Water has a way of softening a garden, doesn't it? Even the smallest pool can make a space feel calm and alive. But you don't need an expensive fountain or a heavy ceramic pond to enjoy that peace. With nothing more than a worn-out tire, a plastic liner, and a few scraps, you can create a tiny oasis that feels like magic. Picture a tire set into the ground, its dark rim lined with smooth pebbles holding a pool of still water. Above it, sunlight drifts through leaves, and on the surface float lilies not store-bought but hand-cut from old plastic jugs, their petals painted white and pink. I remember visiting my aunt years ago. She had a little bird bath in her yard. Nothing fancy, just a shallow bowl balanced on a stone. But I always lingered there as a child, because the water reflected the sky, the trees, and even my own curious face. That memory returns when I see a DIY tire pond, because it offers the same gift reflection. Water doesn't need to ripple or roar. It simply mirrors life back to us, reminding us to pause. Around this pond, little frogs can join the story. They're made from soda bottles, painted green with round, friendly eyes crafted from caps. Some sit serenely on the tire's edge. Others perch on tiny wire legs as if ready to leap. Their paint may chip with time, but that only makes them look more endearing, like old companions who've weathered the seasons alongside you. For seniors, this project is less about heavy work and more about gentle creativity. A family member can help position the tire and add the liner. From there, the fun begins, cutting plastic petals for floating lilies, painting bottle frogs, arranging stones to soften the rim. You can do it at your own pace, seated at a table with brushes and scraps, letting each step become a small meditation. The result is more than decoration. It's a retreat, a place where you can sit with your morning tea and watch light play on water, where children bend close to see their reflections beside the frogs, and where neighbors smile because your pond is living proof that beauty doesn't have to come from wealth. It comes from seeing possibility. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all, that even in something as humble as a tire, you can build a mirror that reflects joy back into your garden and into your heart. Few sights bring more cheer to a garden than bees hovering gently among herbs and flowers. Their hum reminds us that life is busy at work, pollinating and keeping the cycle of growth alive. But for those who want the charm of bees without the sting, there's a playful alternative: bottle bees. Imagine bright yellow soda bottles painted with cheerful black stripes, wings cut from clear packaging, and eyes made from upturned caps. Mounted on thin, flexible wires, they seem to hover mid-flight above thyme, parsley, and chamomile, swaying slightly each time the breeze passes. I once walked into a neighbor's herb garden and paused when I saw these little bees flying among her basil. For a moment, I thought they were real until I noticed their shimmering plastic wings catching the sunlight. She laughed and told me she'd made them with her granddaughter one Saturday afternoon. The best part, she said, is that they never leave. And she was right. Even in winter, when the herbs wilted, the bees remained, keeping the memory of summer alive. There's something symbolic about these tiny creations. Real bees are essential, working tirelessly to keep our gardens fruitful. By making bottle bees, we honor that truth, turning waste into a reminder of community and resilience. Each one is unique, some a little lopsided, others with mismatched eyes, but together they create a lively border that feels both joyful and meaningful. The steps are wonderfully simple. Paint an empty bottle with yellow and black stripes. Cut wings from a piece of clear plastic packaging, perhaps from a container that once held fruit or salad. Attach them with glue or wire and add eyes from caps or buttons. Mount the bee on a flexible stick or wire so it sways gently in the garden. This project doesn't require bending or heavy work. You can paint and assemble everything at a table, then ask someone to help secure the wires in the soil. The result is more than decoration. It's a smile waiting to happen every time you step outside. Children will grin, neighbors will pause, and you will feel a small but steady sense of pride each time you see them dancing in the wind. And perhaps just as importantly, these bees remind us that beauty and purpose can come from the smallest scraps. In our later years, when we sometimes wonder what remains to be created, bottle bees whisper an answer: joy always remains if we're willing to give it wings. Every garden has its guardians. Sometimes a scarecrow, sometimes a wind chime. But one of the most charming protectors you can invite in is a rooster not carved from wood or cast in metal but pieced together from tin cans, bottle caps, and scraps of wire. Imagine a row of these quirky fellows along your fence, each one strutting proudly with tails made from twisted utensils or curled bits of plastic. Their eyes might be buttons or soda caps, their beaks cut from bent spoons, and their combs fashioned from a funnel painted red. They don't crow at dawn, but they do seem to smile, greeting everyone who walks by. I once stopped at a small-town farmer's market where a gentleman displayed his handmade roosters. Each one was different. One looked sleepy with droopy lids, another stood tall and alert, while a third seemed to tilt its head as though listening to the conversation. He told me he started making them after retirement simply to pass time. But soon friends and neighbors began asking for their own, and now his fence line is a cheerful parade of metal birds. They remind me not to take life too seriously, he said with a wink. That's what makes this project so refreshing. It celebrates imperfection. Rust adds charm, mismatched parts, tells stories, and no two roosters are ever the same. For older hands, this is the kind of project that can be adapted to your comfort. You might prefer painting the pieces while someone else assembles them, or you may enjoy arranging the scraps yourself, turning junk into feathers and wings one afternoon at a time. Practicality doesn't need to be overlooked either. Tin cans are light, easy to paint, and often plentiful in recycling bins. Old cutlery can be bent into tail feathers with minimal effort. Even if your rooster ends up a little crooked or patchy, it will carry its own unique personality, and that's what makes people smile. Line a few of them along your garden fence. Let them peek out from the herbs or stand one proudly in a flower bed. Their colorful tails will catch the light, their shiny bodies will glimmer after rain, and their very presence will remind you that laughter belongs in the garden as much as lavender or rosemary. Because in the end, these roosters don't just decorate, they crow quietly of joy, resilience, and the beauty of finding character in cast-offs. Some of the most charming garden visitors are the smallest ones, ladybugs with their bright red shells and playful black dots. They've always been a symbol of luck, of gentle magic landing on your hand for just a moment before flying away. Now imagine capturing that joy, not with real insects, but with scraps given a second life. Old tire rings half buried in the soil and painted a rich, sun-bright red suddenly become a family of oversized ladybugs peeking out from the earth. Black spots are added with simple brush strokes, while antennae curl upward from bent bits of wire. A few even wear spoon smiles or bottle cap eyes, their imperfect shapes only adding to their charm. I remember a summer afternoon with my granddaughter when a ladybug landed right on her finger. She gasped, held her breath, and whispered, "It's lucky Grandma, don't move." That tiny memory lingered far longer than the insect itself. And when I later saw a row of tire ladybugs lining a garden path, I thought, what a beautiful way to keep that magic close every day. They reminded me not only of that moment, but of the importance of finding play in the simplest places. Ladybug tires are wonderful for lining pathways or framing flower beds. Picture them nestled between lavender and marigolds, their red shells glowing in the golden hour of sunset. From a distance, they seem like gentle creatures crawling slowly along the earth. Up close, their handmade details, spoon smiles, bottle cap eyes, bent wire antennae make them delightful characters in your garden story. The best part is how easy they are to make. Tires once too heavy to move on your own can be cut into sections with help and placed gently into the soil. From there, the fun begins, painting them a bright red. dotting them with black circles and adding those whimsical finishing touches. Seniors can take part in the lighter steps, painting, decorating, and arranging plants around them, leaving the lifting for younger hands. And here's the deeper lesson these ladybugs carry. Luck is not about chance alone. Sometimes it's about how we choose to see the world. By turning an old tire into something that sparks joy, you're creating your own good fortune, a reminder that beauty doesn't come from what we buy, but from what we're willing to imagine. So let the ladybugs march across your garden bright and bold. Every glance at them will bring back not just childhood memories, but the gentle truth that luck, joy, and creativity often arrive hand in hand. Few scenes feel as comforting as ducks waddling in a row, each one trailing after the other in cheerful procession. And though most of us don't have a pond or barnyard nearby, we can bring that same warmth into the garden with a little creativity. Picture a line of ducks made from repurposed bottles, bodies rounded and painted, sunny yellow necks stretched from flexible piping, and bottle caps turned into sturdy little feet. Some wear crooked hats, others lean slightly to one side, and one might even sport a twisted beak that makes it look delightfully daydreamy. Set them along a pebble path or between patches of thyme and sage, and suddenly your garden tells a story of its own. I once visited a friend who had placed a family of these ducks by her herb garden. Each duck had its own personality. One stood tall as if leading, another trailed behind as though distracted by the flowers, and the smallest wore a painted bow that her granddaughter had insisted upon. "They make me laugh," she told me, "and that's worth more than anything store-bought." I couldn't agree more. Their imperfections gave them charm, and their placement turned a plain path into a playful crossing. This project is especially friendly for seniors because it requires more painting and decorating than heavy lifting. A bottle becomes the body, a bent spoon or coiled wire can be the beak, and hats or scarves can be fashioned from scraps of fabric. The parts are light and easy to handle, and even if you only make 1 or 2 ducks, they'll bring a smile each time you pass by. Ask family members to help anchor them in the soil, and the rest can be done at a comfortable pace from a table or porch. What I love most is how these ducks turn the garden into a living fairy tale. Children stop to admire them. Neighbors remember them long after their visit, and you find yourself lingering by that spot, more often drawn by the story you've built. And perhaps the bigger lesson is this: joy doesn't come from perfection or grandeur. It comes from the little details, the playful touches, the willingness to see a duck in a bottle and a smile in something discarded. So if your garden path feels a bit empty, let a parade of bottle ducks waddle in. They'll remind you daily that every step, even in later years, can still be guided by lightheartedness and delight. Parrots have always been symbols of color, laughter, and a little mischief, and you don't need to travel to the tropics to enjoy their company. With a handful of discarded plastic bottles, a splash of bright paint, and a touch of patience, you can craft parrots so vibrant they'll look ready to squawk from your garden fence. Imagine feathers made from cut plastic strips, each one curled and painted in fiery reds, sunny yellows, and deep ocean blues. A spoon becomes the beak, bottle caps the sparkling eyes, and before long a parrot perches proudly on a bamboo pole, looking as if it has flown in from far away. I recall meeting a woman at a community workshop who had filled her patio with these colorful birds. She laughed as she showed me how each one reflected the personality of a grandchild who helped her paint. "This one's bold. Like Emma," she said, pointing to a parrot with feathers all in red. Another was painted in blues and greens by her grandson who loved the sea. For her, the parrots weren't just decorations. They were memories of afternoons spent creating together, proof that even scraps could become family treasures. What makes these parrots so captivating is the way they catch the light. In the late afternoon sun, their layered feathers seem to shimmer, glowing like stained glass against the greenery of mint basil or nasturtiums below. They stand as guardians of raised beds, playful companions to herbs and flowers. And every time you look at them, you're reminded of transformation, how something ordinary like a soda bottle can be reborn into something extraordinary with just a bit of imagination. For seniors, this project is perfect for quiet afternoons. The bottles can be cut and painted at a table, the pieces attached one by one as though building a puzzle. You don't need heavy tools, only patience and curiosity. Start with one bottle painted in colors that speak to you and let the feathers build naturally. There's no wrong way. Each parrot is as unique as the hands that make it. And here's the deeper joy. These parrots aren't just birds, they're storytellers. They tell neighbors and visitors that your garden is alive with creativity, that you see possibility where others see trash. And they remind us too that just like those feathers, we can still shine in bold colors even after being weathered by time. Every garden has hidden corners, the bits of fence that look too plain, the walls that need just a touch of life. One of the most enchanting ways to brighten those spaces is with mosaic geckos made from broken glass. Picture the jagged green of an old wine bottle, the blue shimmer of a soda flask, or the clear sparkle of a mineral water jug, all trimmed and set into the playful shape of lizards climbing across wood. Their curved tails glitter in the sun. Their button eyes peek out with mischief, and when dusk falls, the last light of the day catches on their scales like jewels. A neighbor once showed me a fence she had decorated this way. At first, she'd been saving glass for recycling, but one day she thought, why not keep some for myself? With patience, she pieced the shards into a simple gecko shape, gluing each bit onto a board. It wasn't perfect. The edges were uneven, and some colors didn't match, but that only made it more charming. "It keeps me company," she said, "and it reminds me that broken things can still be beautiful." I never forgot that. These geckos can be as whimsical or elegant as you like. Some use forks or spoons for little claws, adding humor to the sparkle of the glass. Others lean toward refinement with carefully chosen shades that create a gemstone effect. Whether playful or polished, they prove that even fragments, things most would sweep away, can tell a story worth keeping. The process is simple enough for gentle hands. Collect bits of colored glass or even broken tiles, lay them out into a gecko pattern, and glue them onto a sturdy backing like old wood or a stepping stone. You can do this at a table, working piece by piece, treating it like a puzzle. The small steps invite calm and reflection, and the end result can brighten a fence wall or even the edge of a raised bed. What I love about mosaic geckos is their message. They say don't throw away what's cracked or worn. They remind us that life too is full of broken edges, and yet those edges can catch the light in ways we never expect. Every time you walk past your glittering gecko, you'll be reminded of resilience, of seeing beauty in what once seemed lost. And isn't that the heart of gardening itself? Taking what appears ordinary or even broken and coaxing it back to life with love. There are few sights more uplifting than butterflies dancing across a garden. Their delicate wings catch the sunlight, their colors flash as they dart from flower to flower, and for a moment, everything feels lighter. But even when real butterflies are scarce, you can bring that same magic to your backyard with creations made from discarded bottles. Picture translucent wings cut from clear plastic, painted in gentle blues, yellows, or even rainbow blends. When fixed to a fence or trellis, these handmade butterflies shimmer in the light, looking as though they've just paused mid-flight. A woman I met at a garden fair told me she began making these butterflies after a summer when she didn't see any real ones. She said her garden felt too quiet, too still. So she cut shapes from old detergent bottles, painted them in soft pastels, and placed them among her climbing roses. When the sun hit just right, she said, I felt as if the butterflies had returned. And though they weren't alive, they still lifted her spirit each time she stepped outside. The beauty of these butterflies is that they can be as simple or as detailed as you'd like. Some are small, tucked quietly among morning glories or sweet peas. Others are large and bold, layered with translucent panels that glow like stained glass. You don't need much, just a bottle, a pair of scissors, and a little paint. Their wire legs can easily be twisted onto fences, wooden poles, or even small stakes for flower pots. What I find most touching about this project is its symbolism. Butterflies have always represented transformation, the beauty of change, and the courage to let go of one form to embrace another. Isn't that exactly what we do when we repurpose trash into treasure? We look at what once seemed finished, even useless, and instead see a chance for renewal. For older hands, this project is gentle and meditative. Sit with a bottle, trace wing shapes, cut them carefully, then let your brush guide you in soft strokes of color. Don't worry if the edges are uneven or the paint bleeds a little, that only makes them feel more alive. Place one on a trellis, then another, and before you know it, your garden fence will look as if a whole swarm has landed. Every glance at these butterflies will remind you that beauty is possible at any stage of life, even after transformation. And perhaps as you sit in your garden watching their painted wings catch the light, you'll feel a quiet reassurance. Just like them, you are still capable of shining in new forms. Not every garden sculpture has to be elegant. Some of the most memorable are the ones that make us chuckle, the ones that surprise us with their playfulness. That's exactly the feeling when you see a goat and rooster built entirely from old tires, hoses, and scraps. The goat stands lopsided and wide-eyed, his horns made from coiled garden hose, his body pieced together from painted rubber, and his mouth set as though he's nibbling on basil. Beside him, a rooster struts proudly, his tail a grand fan of tire feathers painted in fire-bright reds and yellows, his beak tilted skyward as if mid-crow. They're not polished or perfect, but that's the charm. They look as if the junkyard itself decided to come alive and join your garden. I once visited a community garden where a group of retirees had built their own scrap farm. Alongside neat rows of vegetables stood these whimsical characters. Each had a sign, "Welcome to the Junkyard Coop." Children ran to take pictures with the rooster, adults lingered to laugh at the goat's crooked grin, and everyone agreed the figures gave the garden more personality than any store-bought statue ever could. One of the builders told me, "It's not about the craft, it's about the joy." That joy was contagious. These sculptures may look complicated, but they don't have to be. Tires can be painted in sections, stacked for bodies, and cut for tails or legs. Light items like funnels, spoons, or bottle caps add the details, eyes, combs, or little touches that bring the figures to life. For seniors, the heavier cutting or moving can be done with help, while the painting and decorating can be enjoyed at a table, one piece at a time. What's especially meaningful about these creations is the way they turn boundaries upside down. Tires and hoses are usually symbols of wear and discard, things we see piled up and unwanted. Yet here they become companions, guardians, even comedians in the garden. They remind us that what's worn isn't worthless and that laughter belongs alongside lavender and rosemary. And perhaps that's the quiet lesson these quirky animals carry. As we age, we sometimes worry about being past our prime. But just like those tires and hoses, we are far from finished. With imagination, with love, we can still bring light-hearted joy into the world. Place a goat and rooster in your yard, and each time you pass by, they'll remind you to smile, to embrace imperfection, and to keep celebrating the playfulness that keeps us young at heart. As we come to the end of this gentle walk through recycled wonders, I hope you feel what I felt while telling these stories, a deep reassurance that beauty isn't bought, it's made. Each bottle penguin, each tire caterpillar, each glowing owl lantern reminds us that trash is never just trash, it's potential in disguise. And more importantly, it's a reflection of our own lives. We too have been through seasons where we felt worn, forgotten, or out of place. Yet with imagination and kindness, we discover there's still so much within us waiting to shine. Think of the flamingos spinning in the wind, born from fan blades once tossed aside. Think of the mosaic geckos, their scales made from broken glass, glowing proudly on the fence. Isn't that exactly what life teaches us? That brokenness can still sparkle, and that movement doesn't end just because time has passed. Our gardens become mirrors of these truths. They whisper softly that we don't need perfection to create joy. We need only the willingness to try. I encourage you, dear friend, not to wait for the right supplies or the perfect design. Start small. Paint one bottle plant, one owl string up, one butterfly. Let the process be playful, not pressured. You'll find that even the simplest project can lift your spirit, spark a memory, or invite a neighbor to stop and chat. And isn't that the real gift, a garden that doesn't just grow plants but grows connection, laughter, and meaning? Before we part, I want to leave you with this thought. The garden, like life, isn't about what you throw away. It's about what you choose to nurture. Your hands still create beauty. Your imagination still matters. Every scrap you transform is a reminder that you too are capable of transformation. So go ahead, pick up that bottle, that tire, that broken spoon. Turn it into something that makes you smile. Which idea from today's journey spoke most to you? Was it the ducks parading across a path, the owls glowing at dusk, or the ladybugs marching along the soil? I'd love for you to share in the comments so this community can keep inspiring each other. And if you'd like more gentle inspiration for your garden and your heart, consider subscribing. Until next time, may your hands stay busy, your garden stay joyful, and your spirit stay light. Happy gardening, dear friend.